In today's segment of Cobos' Corner, we're going to answer one of the most asked questions in the athletic world. What is harder to hit, a baseball or a softball? Next, are you taking any illegal substances without knowing it? We'll be showing you what could potentially make you fail the NCAA drug test. Finally, let's talk gear. What is the hottest trends on the field? Do they actually enhance your performance, or is it just about style? Those stories are coming up right here on Cobos' Corner. Welcome to Cobos' Corner. I'm your host, Veronica Cobos. In today's show, we examine baseball versus softball pitches, which is harder to hit. So we went out and asked you our Cobos Corner question of the day. If you were offered $1 million to hit a baseball or softball, which would you choose?
Softball pitcher, because the ball is much bigger, and like in baseball, the ball is so tiny you barely can see it. You don't even know when they're hitting it.
I'd rather hit a baseball because it's proven to be easier and the ball travels farther when it's hit off the bat.
I would say baseball. A baseball pitch. Because I've never hit a softball, like, 'cause they underhanded, so it's probably weird. And I'd rather do something I did before, which is straight at me instead of coming underneath.
I would say baseball because I'm more familiar with the technique of throwing a baseball as opposed to a softball. I mean, I've played baseball before, I've hardly ever played softball. So for me, choosing between hitting a baseball and choosing between hitting a softball is just, common sense for me since I'm familiar with a baseball.
You all have different opinions about what's best to hit, but what do the athletes and the coaches think?
Aside from the obvious, the rules, the ball, the equipment, I think the pace is a lot quicker in softball. I think it is a little more explosive than baseball. Obviously, mechanics is definitely different too. Not only pitching, but also hitting is a lot different than baseball comparative to softball. Softball is more on an even plane, whereas baseball is a little more loopy.
Well, I think the reaction times is different due to field size. I think that's the biggest thing when you take the two things. That's the main component, in my opinion, where you're playing on a much smaller field, and the ball is bigger, but really it's the diamond and the difference in timing that, to me, is the biggest difference.
I think the mental aspect of the game makes them very similar. The dedication to succeed at it and the mental toughness to be consistently good at it is really important and makes them both very similar. The concept of the game, obviously, but I think the heart and the mental aspect, definitely.
Well, I mean, the fundamentals of the game are still the same. You still got to field the ball, hit the ball, throw the ball, catch the ball. I mean, all those aspects of it. The fundamentals of the swing are very similar now. Some of the difference, there's a little bit difference in leads and things like that, which don't apply to softball, but games are very similar.
I think a baseball player might have a little difficulty with hitting a pitch like a rise ball, or any of these off-speed drops and things like that kind of have been made up through softball.
I think that the size of the ball makes a difference for sure. That would be probably the biggest thing. Because reaction time is going to be a little slower for you as well, which I think is make it easier for you, but with the finding release point and figuring out release point velocity from up top here, I think it'll be difficult, but mainly just the size of the ball.
I think a softball is harder to hit because of the different planes it moves on. Baseball, for the most part, works on a horizontal and downward angle, whereas softball goes both vertical and down and then side to side.
I think softball. You know, especially at the college level. I mean, we're not talking slow pitch softball, but you know, at the college level, certainly softball. Main reason is because the movement of the ball. I mean, you know, having something run in, up, which doesn't happen in baseball. You know, that up is different. You know, the same action going down, going away with movement. Rarely do you see, you know, significant inaction, well, from a right-hander. So inaction, you know, you might see a little on a changeup or a two-seam fastball from in baseball. But as far as screwballs, you know, those haven't been thrown since the 70s. And the riser, you know, forget about it. Nobody's throwing the riser. It's impossible in baseball. So, you know, I think it is harder. And plus just the fact that the reaction time, you know, I mean, seeing it from that distance and having to figure out all that movement, you know, whether it's a bigger ball or not, I think it's much more difficult to hit it in softball.
I think a softball is harder to hit just because of the different angles, and the distance is a lot closer than a baseball.
I think that hitting a softball is harder than hitting a baseball because the distance is shorter and the reaction time has to be quicker.
Coming up after the break, if you're an athlete, you know what to not drink or take, but we'll have more tips as to what to stay away from in your kitchen.